We're doing something a little different this week as we have decided to finally put our money where our mouths are, sort of speaking, as if you follow myself and John Fraser and John Hodge on Twitter a little bit, we do enjoy talking about the curling a little bit, and we've kind of developed our own little hashtag over the last couple of years called hashtag 8EndNation, and we decided, well, why don't we actually get together, I guess online get together, not actually get together in the same room, that'd be a little too weird, and talk a little bit about some curling. So this is the first of hopefully many to come, and over the years, we're probably just going to keep it to about one a year or so for the 8EndNation podcast with myself, John Fraser, and of course also of 3 Down Nation, John Hodge. Boys, how's it going today?
Really good. Just actually last night was at a Brier send-off event for Team Saskatchewan. So they brought cake and some drinks and some shots. So needless to say, I'm not biased at all.
I'm doing well, boys. I love curling. My two sports are football and curling. It's a weird combination, I know. Fun story, the first time I met our fearless leader at 3 Down Nation, Drew Edwards, was the 2015 Grey Cup. We were at an event. There were NBA highlights on the screen, and he's like, "Hey, you a basketball fan?" And I was like, "No, I love the CFL and curling, and that's pretty much it." And he looks at me, and he's like, "You Manitoban. You Manitoban."
Well, I can back up the story a little bit, too, because last year at CFL week, it was me, you, Dunk, and Drew all in the same house there in Winnipeg. And we put on the curling one night, and Drew and Dunk were like, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, it's the, I think it was the Brier was on then. I was like, "It's the Brier. Like, we're going to watch this. Like, come on."
It was Women's Worlds.
It was the Women's Worlds, right.
We were watching, and I distinctly remember that because we put it on. We both wanted to watch it. And they were laughing at us, and Dunk wanted to watch some of like the pre-NFL combine stuff. And I'm like, "Look, we don't have to watch a future 4th-round pick, throw footballs to the targets on a field. Like, let's watch the curling." And of course, by the 30-minute mark or whatever, they were just as invested as we were. They're not curling fans per se, but there are only two types of people: people who love curling and people who just don't know that they love curling yet. So that's
true.
Fine.
It's true. But I have a new bro crush for you, John Hodge. A local Saskatoon product. His name's Rylan Kleider. Not only is he the junior champion for the province of Saskatchewan multiple times over, but he's also one of the Saskatoon Hilltops of the Canadian Junior Football League, star receiver and kicker. So he not only plays football at a high level, but he curls at a very high level. So I feel like that's your new bro crush. And with my love of football and curling, that's what I'm trying to mold my kids to be. Max is entering his first year of football coming up here in the spring, and hopefully we'll be into curling by the fall. I'm trying to make it happen. I'm brainwashing them early.
That's awesome. And I'll say this: I don't know as much about curling, at least on the, let's call it the professional level, nearly to the extent that I follow the CFL. The CFL I follow 12 months a year, talk to people. Curling I very much simply enjoy as a fan. That said, I love it. I'm really passionate. I watch the Scotties and the Brier every year, every draw that I can. I got up at 7:30 a.m. Manitoba time all of last week to catch as much of the morning draws as I could. Even Saturday and Sunday, I got up at 7:30. Some of the matchups weren't even good, but I still got up because I love it. The Scotties, gotta love it. And the Brier, being in Brandon, Manitoba this year, I'm fortunate enough I'm going to be able to make it out to some of the draws. So that's very exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're far more dedicated than I, because I generally miss every morning draw of every Scotties and Briers and Worlds and whatever else happens to be going on, because that is far too early for me. But Haji, you did say it was weird that it's a football curling, love affair, but I really don't think it is, especially out west. I think especially in the CFL community, if you follow some of the other CFL fans on Twitter, some of the prominent ones, there is actually, I think, a lot of crossover between CFL fans and curling fans, and you would think maybe because it skews a little older, but some of the people on Twitter that I follow are not exactly the gray-haired folks either, and they're into curling as well. So I don't think it's quite as weird as you might think it is. Maybe to Ontarians it is, but out this way, I think there's definitely a big crossover between CFL fans and curling fans in this country.
I would agree.
I think there's a nice kind of yin and yang with curling and football just as far as the calendar goes. I mean, CFL season, for instance, kind of starts kicking up in May. Who knows? Randy Ambrosi may one day have us playing a regular season game on April Fool's Day, but we'll see. That might be some time down the road. But for now, it kicks off in May, and then the end of November comes the Grey Cup. And then, your first spiels kind of start kicking up in December, and then things really hit their stride in the new year. And so from a calendar perspective, I'm not a hockey guy. I've never been a hockey guy. Nothing against hockey. It's just never been my thing. Never played it. Don't watch it. To me, that makes sense. The thing that I think catches people off guard is just physically the games are, almost, as different could be. They are polar opposites in regards to the number of players, the style of play, the physicality. There are probably some curlers who could hold their own on a football field. That said, the games themselves, as much as they're different, I think the strategy and the importance of the strategy has some similarities between the two, and I think the calendar really helps. Be a fan of both, because when the CFL is in the off season, curling kicks up, and vice versa. It works well.
Absolutely. And so we're going to get into a few things in this. We definitely have to talk about the final at the Scotties, which I still kind of trying to wrap my head around what exactly happened in that game, because I was texting both of you guys during that game, and it should have been in the bag, and it wasn't. And it's one of those games that we're going to remember for a long time. We're going to touch on the overall format and how it's doing now in year 2 for the Scotties and the Brier, with the pools and the different rounds and all that going on. And then we'll look ahead to the Brier a little bit, where John Fraser, of course, because I'm between two Johns, will have his famous hot take that is sure to be wrong, but there is a twist on this one that might actually make him right, because he has been right before following this method. But as we like to do on the 3 Down Greencast, we like to enjoy a little beverage while we do this. So we'll start with the incumbent. Fraser, what's in the glass this week?
Well, and this will also go towards my tease as to who's going to be one of my Brier playoff picks. I'm going with a Fort Garry Dark. One of my introductions and my first love of craft beer was when I got introduced to Fort Garry during a family visit in Winnipeg. Of course, I have family in Winnipeg. I am originally from Northern Ontario. Again, more biases that I have when talking Brier. But Fort Garry Dark, for a guy that's not a big stout fan, this one's a little lighter than a stout, but still has a similar taste like one, which I like. I don't like feeling like I'm chewing on my beer. This gives me a nice, a dark stout coffee-like taste without making me, have a second supper tonight.
That's fair. Hodgie, you got anything?
I got nothing, but I did moments before firing up the pod. I had a wonderful slice of sourdough bread that did remind me of some of the rich tasting beverages that John was describing. So nothing in the glass, but I had something on the plate, and in my book, that's pretty solid too.
We're 3 fat guys around a table here, so it's all good. Yeah. Well, we'll accept food for sure. For me, I guess they're not technically sponsoring this podcast, but Pile of Bones Red Ale, just really, it's nice, easy drinking, caramelly kind of red beer that just tastes great year-round, pretty much with anything. And so with that, we'll turn our attention back to the Scotties now, and what a final that was. And we're going to get into kind of the whole tournament as a whole, but I mean, I just can't believe it, because there was the tweet late in the game. Curling Canada sends out, how you doing, curling fans? And there's the gif of Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, hyperventilating into a bag because it was a 1-point game and it was so tight and everything. But I was like, oh, come on. Homan's up 1 with the hammer coming home, even though she's kind of been slipping a little bit. At the end of the day, she's still going to pull this off, and she didn't. And
no,
she didn't, and she was up 5-1 at the 5th end break, which is astronomical lead in curling, especially for probably the best defensive team in the world, no matter which side of the sport we're talking about. And it got away from her. And I still just, quite frankly, can't believe it.
No, and I'm with you, Joel. I think the funny thing is just reading back in my text from that night, one of my group chats I'm in is actually a curling fan club, and then, of course, talking to you like I do all the time. I think at 5-1, I got many separate texts saying, okay, this one's over. It's over. It's done. And then same thing. Even you and I were texting about, and you know, I thought Chelsey Carey did a great job in just coming back to make it close on the scoreboard at the end. But I had the same thought as you. You texted me, Joel, and I said to you, and we were like, yeah, well, you know anything about curling? You've got Homan up 1 with. Even if Carey steals one here, Homan is tied with in the extra. It's not going to happen. And holy crap, were we wrong? It just it seems to, much like at the Olympics in the big moment, you know, this new look Rachel Homan team, and they talked about it all week almost ad nauseum, you know, oh, now they can draw. She's a better drawer. They're gone away from the hits and yakety yak. But when it came up, when it was go time, it was still, okay, she's got to draw. She had 2 draws to the 4-foot for the win.
Yeah. Completely wide open draws, too. It's not like they were difficult draws to make. For someone of her skill level to have to bite half of the 4, you know, you say all of them should be able to do that with their eyes closed, frankly.
Oh, absolutely. But again, the position, and you have to give, to me, a ton of credit to Chelsey Carey, who I know gets beat up on a lot. You know, I think to get themselves back into that game, to not give up after being down 5-1, and to force Rachel, the shots they made in both the 10th and 11th, to force Rachel Homan not into a touch the paint and you win, to force her into 2 draws to the 4. Like, a lot of credit has to go to that, because how many 10th and 11th ends have we seen, boys, where it's touch paint, win game, and instead it's, oh boy, you got to draw half of the 4. So I was entertained. I loved the final. I do think the best team all week won. I think all 3 of us could agree it was going to be Carey and Homan from day 1. I would have put money on that. And I would have given you odds for anybody else. But I think the best team in the end won, and good on Chelsey Carey for fighting back in that.
The thing that boggled my mind a little bit in the final was that 4th end that quickly was becoming a disaster for Chelsey Carey's team, which only got worse, and I think really hit panic levels when there was a miss, followed by Ontario coming down, getting the 3. And at that point, as you said, Gas, it's 5-1, and Alberta gets 1. And at the break, you know, if you give Rachel Homan a 3-point lead, followed by, you know, the hammer, you're in trouble. And I like you guys said the game was done. And Chelsey Carey, it never felt like this, because there were so many opportunities for Rachel Homan to make a shot that we're accustomed to seeing her make and just seal it off. But Chelsey Carey stole 4 times.
Just unbelievable.
4 steals, which, as anybody who follows curling knows, is, you're lucky to steal on a Rachel Homan 1 time in a game. Yeah. Stealing 4 times is crazy. And the other thing I'll also highlight is the fact that all week, the people actually in Sydney, of course, the commentators who I think do a great job, Russ Howard, Cheryl Bernard, and of course, everybody loves Vic Browder, who does the hosting on TSN. They talked all week about how it was hitter's ice. This is straight ice. It's unpredictable. Some of the weights, depending on where you catch the sheet, can be hard to predict, and so therefore, it's hitter's ice. And so, that to me even just makes it further further unbelievable that Carey was able to steal 4 times in the second half of the game. If the game's going to be open, if the game's going to be hit friendly, the last thing you expect to see are a ton of rocks in play and steals happening. You expect to see more open play. You expect to see a lot of singles. You expect to see, anyways, just blew my mind.
Yeah, well, and we saw Rachel's approach, because I believe it was in one of the ends late in the game. She had a double that she could have attempted. In her previous life, she probably would have attempted. Instead, she went for the draw, which was, in theory, maybe the easier shot. And And some people talked about that, and I know there was some talk on Twitter about, are they going to stick with this new philosophy of how they're going to approach the game? And even though it didn't really work out for Rachel Homan and her team this time, I think ultimately long term, I hope they do. I hope they don't just take 1 week and a couple of bad draws for a reason to completely scrap what could be a winning formula down the road. If they're able to figure it out, it's a bit of a small sample size at this point, so I hope that if they believe that this is something that they can do, and it's something that's going to help them take their game to the next level, if there is one for them, frankly, that they stick with it. I hope they're not such a knee-jerk reaction to just say, okay, this didn't work, Marcel Rock, see you later, we're going back to the way we were. I honestly, I hope they don't do that.
No, I would agree. I do like the fact, though, that and I get it, Adam Kingsbury was a big part of their success before, having a sports psychologist as a coach. I can definitely see the benefits in that, especially in such a mental game. But to bring in Marcel Rock, an actual curler, an actual curling coach, to work with you, to help you with your deliveries, to help you with your strategy, to really develop the strategy. He took a look at the best women's team in the world outside of John Hodge's ultimate crush, Jennifer Jones, maybe of all time. Like, they're in the running for GOAT status here already, and he took them and went, okay, we're going to make you better, and this is how we're going to make you better. And that's something that only a curler could look at a team as dominant as Rachel Homan and go, yeah, okay, we're going to make you even better now, but we're going to do it this way. So I think I don't think we're going to see the knee-jerk reaction, Joel. I
don't think so either.
With Marcel Rock there, I think he's going to do what he's done for many Asian teams and just say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a ton of success. And as soon as that draw game is down and she can draw the open forefoot like we've seen, again, to go back to Chelsey Carey, we've seen countless times Chelsey Carey find that draw weight in big moments over and over and over again. And if Rachel could draw as well as Chelsea, what level does this team get to? Like, that's it. Like, they're already damn near unstoppable, and it's going to be scary to think what this team could continue to become.
I agree. It's obviously Rachel Homan at this point in her career with the team that she's been with for many, many, many years now. Joanne Courtney hasn't been there as long, but even then, she's now been there, I believe, 4 years. So it's certainly a roster that's proven on a world level. They're an Olympic roster. One thing I will highlight is the fact that Rachel Homan and her team did go to the Olympics in 2018. Obviously, we're very disappointed to not come home with a medal, something that was, I think, a big shock to a lot of people. In Canada, I think we take for granted the fact that we're going to medal in curling at the Olympics, regardless of who represents our country. I think that, any number of our teams, there were probably 3 or even 4 teams at the Scotties, just at that one event, who could probably win gold at the Olympics. And I think at the Brier, you could argue there's maybe 6 or 7 who could go and win gold. That said, despite the fact that she's probably the best women's team in the world, Rachel Homan's team did not go home with a medal. And I'm interested to see how they bounce back from this Scotties loss. I'm not discrediting them in any way. They're a phenomenal team. They've been there, done that at the world stage. And again, making it to the Olympics is still a huge accomplishment, even if you don't medal. But the fact that they've now had 2 very disappointing finishes to 2 very large national or international competitions, I think it's going to be a storyline that follows them into the next one, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they bounce back.
Yeah, and plus, let's not forget, guys, it was a great Alberta final in the Scotties.
Yeah, well,
of course.
We had a very lengthy discussion about residency rules before we went on the air here a little bit, and there's probably not enough time really to get into that, and nothing's really going to change in the immediate future, so there's really not a whole lot of point to getting into that right now. But
just really good jokes.
There's really good jokes, yeah, but there has been some change to the format, and this is now year 2 for the Scotties and the Brier, going to this 2-pool system, Pool A, Pool B, and then the championship draw, and then, of course, the page playoff on the weekend. And I think we can all agree last year It started with a bit of a dud. There was a lot of blowouts, especially early in the week. Like, the preliminary round was not really entertaining at either the Scotties or the Brier.
Yeah.
And the championship round wasn't great either. I don't think in either per se. I don't remember that well, but I just remember I remember watching and being like, oh man, what have they done to this thing? This is not good. But now we're waiting on to see what happens at the Brier this week. But based off what I saw at the Scotties this time in year 2 of this format, I'm like, okay, this is getting somewhere. There wasn't the barrage of blowouts that we saw. The championship round was pretty good. Every game was pretty tight. If there was a game on TV, odds are at least it wasn't like 14-0 in the third end. So, is this going somewhere? Is this a format that is working for them? And I'm starting to lean toward yes. I know there are people out there who are upset that every team doesn't play every team. And I get that's how they've always done that. But at the same time, I'll say this. Number one, we decide in team sports Olympic and world champions with pool play. So I think we can decide a national champion without everyone playing everyone. Like, imagine the World Cup of Soccer if everyone played everyone. That tournament would last like 40 years. So
yeah,
it's just I don't think it really matters that much, because I think at the end of the day, if you're one of the top 4 teams in Pool A, most years I'm pretty confident saying that you're probably better than probably the bottom 4 teams in the other pool, and I don't really need to watch you play them, frankly.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the format now that I think everybody's kind of figured it out is a good working format for 2 reasons. One, I like the analogy that Russ Howard actually used. He said it's just like golf. It's no different than golf. You play Thursday, you play Friday, you cut half the players, and away you go with your champions, right? I do like thinking of it like that. You kind of cut the bottom feeders. And as well, and maybe things are going to change down the road. I'm sure they will. Nobody needs to see Nunavut, especially in the Brier, play the likes of Northern Ontario, the wildcard team, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Canada. Nobody needs to see that bloodbath that many times. Like, some of these programs that are in the championship on both the men's and women's sides are just so far behind some of the other provinces. Like, let's cut the carnage. Nobody needs to see them play that many games to figure out, yeah, that's right, Nunavut's still probably 20 years behind the rest of the country when it comes to curling development, right? So you get rid of, to me, especially with the Pool A, Pool B, you get rid of a lot of your, oh God, this is going to be ugly, why is this the TSN feature games? And instead, you have those over the first 2 days, and then it's kind of a nice success story if one of those underdog teams can pull out a huge upset. I mean, they're not going to maintain the cream will still rise to the crop in pool play, but it is nice to see, as a guy that's been on the other end, that's been on both ends of some lopsided scores on the curling ice throughout my whole life. There's nothing worse than just getting overmatched sometimes and just not having your night. You just want to get out of there, right? Give them the experience of the national championship. Let them come out and play. But you're right. They have no business playing on the weekend at this point. So let's cut them, just like they do in golf. You don't want to see Tony Romo paired with Tiger Woods on a Sunday. So you know what? I'm a big fan of it, and I'm with you, Joel. I think especially in the women's game, where I do think as a whole, your bottom to your top, with a couple exceptions, is a lot closer than it is right now in the men's game. So I do think it'll continue to be entertaining. Like, again, looking into the Brier, I think you have the pool of death, and then you have the pool of intrigue.
In my book, the perfect Scotties format would be a full round robin of about 32 teams, and that way you could start the tournament on like January 1st and then like crown your winner on like April 30th, like a 4-month.
So we just we cut out provincials and just do it March Madness style. Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, but like March Madness, but with a full round robin before you start. The playoffs would be like, your top 16 get a bye. And then teams, team 17 through 32, they do like some type of like qualifying pool for the playoffs, but then the playoffs take like a month, like that's optimally what I would have. But given, the limitations of logistics, I understand that it's probably best to keep this tournament and the Brier to merely 1 week.
Fair point, Hodgie. I mean, I'm with you. I would like to see 1,000 round-robin curling games from January on, but I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah, so
I think these teams' employers might have a little bit of a problem with that.
True. Yeah, fair enough. Exactly. So if you're gonna do what we think Curling Canada believes in, or at least they've publicly said they believe in, which is including everybody, including the territories and some weaker provinces that had been relegated prior to this current system, I think it's a nice happy medium. Now, I have a friend in particular who's actually, if not a bigger curling fan than me, admittedly somebody who's more knowledgeable about the curling world. I tell him secrets about the CFL, and he tells me secrets about the curling world. And he hates the fact that this is still a provincial system. He believes that our national tournament should be probably a 10-team tournament with no affiliation, just go best of the best of the best. Similarly to what the Roar of the Rings is when teams qualify for the Olympics. I tend to disagree. I like that it's provincial. I like that the territories are there. It does suck sometimes when a really good team doesn't get to compete, and we're going to see that at the Brier with Botcher and Epping competing for a wild card spot. That said, neither team won their province, and if you don't win a province, then that's on you. With all due respect, so yeah. I like the system. I think it's a nice balance between getting all the elite teams in and still representing the provincial system, which, while I can see how the argument can be made that it's outdated, frankly, I still enjoy it. And again, the cream still gets a chance to rise to the top by the midway point of the week, which I think serves, again, a nice balance between the two.
Yeah, and I still don't really know where I fall on this. There's a lot of people who talk on both sides of it, and I definitely see both sides of the argument. When it comes to whether we should just send our best to this or if it should be the provincial system. And there's been some talk of two-tiering it, of where basically you would turn the Canada Cup into the qualifier for the Worlds and you just have the Scotties and the Brier for everyone else. I'm like, I definitely don't like that. So I don't know what the answer is, frankly, long-term to this question, but it's one that will eventually Curling Canada will have to address one way or the other and just kind of put the issue to bed, and we'll have to live with it. But one thing this format has definitely done too is one of the best games of the week. I mean, we've always know like the 1-2 page playoff game is generally the best game of the week because the top teams get that second chance, so they tend to be a little more aggressive and it's fun to watch. But that wildcard game on Friday night is really fun to watch too, as these two teams fight just to get into the tournament because everything's on the line. And I remember during the Alberta Provincials, there was discussion about Kevin Cooey. He's like, he's not taking this seriously because he has the wild card game. And I'm like, really? You're going to put your entire Brier hopes into one game against John Epping rather than getting a free pass by beating all these other teams? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
You're absolutely right. And insider knowledge there for you, Joel. One of the options considered strongly by Curling Canada was sending the Canada Cup winner.
Yeah.
And that was actually something that was seriously on the table. And to talk to your point too, Hodgie, with your buddy that thinks we should just send our best teams. Well, we already do that. It is called the Canada Cup. It's funny. That's just an event that hasn't really caught traction because to your casual fan, it's a vague championship, right? I mean, it's even though that I do think as a full week of curling, that is a better event than the Brier. But you're right. There's something that's traditional. I mean, like, when we all stepped on the ice for the first time, you thought about throwing that winning draw, for the Brier Championship, being able to take your obscure curling club in Northwestern Ontario, to a notable thing because you're the guy that threw that last draw, which, knowing me, I'd probably throw 12 feet light and make my sweepers nearly die.
See, I never had that dream because I'm a front ender, so I was just like, I will sweep the rock to the button, but I'm not throwing it.
The ones that are so definitively sure are light. See, that's why we'd make a great team here, Joel. I know I'm going to be 10 feet light on that draw to the button, and you're going to have to go the whole way.
Yeah, I've done it.
Speaking of the Brier, of course, boys, it is in beautiful Brandon, Manitoba. We said we were going to talk about this, but so I'm going to put you both on the spot. So you're going to have a moment to think about it because I'm actually going to come out with this first. I think we should all pick the playoff teams.
Oh, all four? Jeez, okay.
No, just your page playoff teams. Yeah, we'll pick the 4-page playoff teams.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know who you think's going to win it and your dark horse team. All right. Okay. Yep. Give you time to process. Okay. And of course, Joel, we can back this up. We will back my winning pickup with a story here as well, too.
Yes.
So I will let you tell the story after I make my winning pick because it is totally biased. So again, citing ultimate bias. So my bias is guys I have drank beer with. I'm going to pick the 4 playoff teams. I'm going to go Manitoba, Northern Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Alberta.
Wow.
And sticking with the theme of teams or people I have drank beer with, I'm going to throw BC in as my dark horse team that I think can make a lot of noise at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at BC, I think they're coming out of, as I just referred to it, as the pool of intrigue. I think their pool is generally weak. I think Gushu's going to be good out of Canada.
Yep.
Alberta with Cooey is going to be good. Ontario's an unknown. Nova Scotia, the Territories, New Brunswick, and Nunavut should be bingo cards for them.
Mm-hmm.
With a Jim Cotter, Steve Laycock back end. I think they're going to come into the championship pool with a strong record. You've got 2 guys. Let's not forget Jim Cotter was oh so close to being the Olympic team a few years ago. Add Steve Laycock, who, by the way, I should also throw in a plug. I'm going to contact Curling Canada. I can't think of the last time a curling club, my curling club, the Nutana in Saskatoon, sent 7 curlers to the Brier. Team Saskatchewan's a full handful of 5. Steve Laycock on BC and Colton Flash in Alberta. This is starting now. People are starting to connect the dots. Who's John drank some beer with here? So I think BC is my dark horse, but ultimately, and I'm sorry Saskatchewan, I'm sorry Kirk Myers, I'm sorry Dallin Myers. I love you guys. I really do. You're going to make the final. But Manitoba is going to win a home provincial Brier led by my very good friend, Colin Hodgson, sweeping Mike McEwen's final rock to the 4-foot. Now, Joel, I feel like you should give some history on my bias pick and how it actually worked out before.
Yes, so it was, I guess, a little over a year ago. John and I were discussing the Olympic curling that was about to happen. And for reasons we don't really need to get into, John's not really a big fan of one Kevin Cooey. So he decided that he was going to cheer for Mr. Schuster, the Olympics, based on the sole reason that he's enjoyed some beverages with Mr. Schuster over the years.
Mr. Schuster and Matt Hamilton. Actually, Matt Hamilton, I feel like the good karma, he hooked Lacey and Max up with free tickets. I had a paid ticket all week at the Grand Slam of Curling in Lloydminster last year. And I was sitting there with Matt Hamilton in between games. We had some beers the night before. And he's like, in his raspy Matt Hamilton voice, "Hey, your wife want to go?" "Yeah, she loves curling." "Great. Here's tickets. I don't know if the boy needs them." So Matt Hamilton, right there, drank beer with him twice that weekend. Gave my wife free tickets. Next thing you know, he's a gold medal champion.
Yeah, so, I mean, the beer method worked at the Olympics, at least on the men's side. So, I mean, it's hard to argue.
But you know what? It really is. The only person I've drank beers with in women's curling is Chelsey Carey.
And you're
if Chelsey was there, she would have won.
Yeah. And you're probably the only so-called curling expert on the planet that probably picked the United States to win gold medal at the Olympics. So,
hey, once in a while. Hey, you know what? Anybody that listens to the 3 Down Greencast knows I get absolutely none of these hot takes right. But my hot take of a Manitoba-Saskatchewan final at the Brier, it's got a chance. I literally was drinking a beer with Kirk and Dallin Myers last night. So
I mean, if there's something to this, then I think every team in the country is going to have to start contacting you for beers.
Hey, I'm fine with that. And the only reason Manitoba gets the nod is both the home advantage, and I got to say, Colin Hodgson and I curled together in a fun spiel in Eiley, Alberta. God, this would have been even before he joined Reed Carruthers. years ago. And Colin and I have been very, very, very good friends ever since. He has come to the house often. He has brought many bottles of rum to my house. He's bought many beers over the years. And, so they get the slight nod over Kirkendall, and it pains me to say it because same thing. I have at times with Kirkendall and Myers at Hogfest in Anglefeld, Saskatchewan, because the boys are from nearby, right? The boys are from Munster. My wife's from Anglefeld. So they have this annual homecoming event where they cook enough pigs to feed about 1,000 people. So there's these flame-roasted pigs. And this is after the boys had been to the Brier. I remember I was literally standing by the bar beside Kirkendall, and it was advantageous to me because not only did I get to sit there and drink beers with a couple guys I would consider friends of mine, but because you're a well-known curler in small-town Saskatchewan at a large dance, I don't think I ended up paying for a drink the whole night because Kirkendall had so many beers bought for them, and they weren't going crazy like I was. It was literally like, hey, yeah, thanks for the drink. Hey, Fraser, what's up? You know, it was that. There's also been, and the video has since been deleted, and this is why Northern Ontario is in there. Not only am I a Northern Ontario guy, but one night, Grand Slam of Curling in Lloydminster, there was a karaoke night at the bar, the hotel all the curlers were staying at. So I met Colin Hodgson for a drink. And over my previous career, I had interviewed Brad Jacobs several times. Brad has always been super accommodating. He talked to me on the bus after winning the Olympic trials. I talked to him shortly after winning at the Olympics. He's been nothing but accommodating. He was always great for just a small-town media guy that knew curling and loved curling. But Brad and I, there is video someplace of us singing Wheatus's Teenage Dirtbag. Myself, Brad Jacobs, and my friend Mason's wife, or soon-to-be wife, Rianne, are sitting up at the top of this karaoke bar that is mostly filled with other curlers. And I am singing the high part to Brad Jacobs, who's grasping his heart in his microphone, as though it was a very sensual moment. That is why Northern Ontario is going to make the playoffs.
That's well, and plus they're also a pretty good team. So
yeah, there's that.
There's that as well.
I guess that's a fact of it, but it, yeah, Colton Flash mixed double championship here in Saskatoon, and a couple of times when he was still curling with Steve Laycock. So that's why Alberta gets in, is because of drinking with Colton. And Steve Laycock gets my dark horse pick because although I've never partied that hard with Steve, he is Hungarian. I am the permanent MC of the Hungarian Pavilion in Saskatoon at Folkfest. And Steve and I have had a few shots, and I have advertised the fact that he might be the most famous Hungarian man in Saskatoon.
All right, so now that Grandpa Fraser's done with story time, Hodgie, who do you got?
I had to justify my picks.
I was going to say, my favorite part of that was that John asked us a question and then answered it and then dropped about a gazillion names.
He's like, this is my moment, damn it.
Full credit. I have no names to drop, so hey, you may as well drop them. My picks, I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm picking Alberta. I'm picking Northern Ontario. I'm picking Canada, and I'm picking Team Wildcard to make the playoffs. Doesn't matter to me if it's John Epping. Doesn't matter to me if it's Brendan Botcher. They're going to the playoffs. And my dark horse team, and I must apologize because I understand that you are friends with Colin Hodgson. My dark horse team is Team Manitoba. I understand they're provincially ranked. Their CTRS ranking is 8, and I understand that they have won a great deal of games this year. The reason they're my dark horse team is because the one time I, as a very proud Manitoban, got the opportunity to watch the new Team Carruthers, which, you know, all of us being in Manitoba were super excited to see after several years of Mike McEwen and Reed Carruthers, you know, trying to duke it out on the provincial scene for 4 years. The one time I got to see them was the Canada Cup, where they went 0-6 and got absolutely destroyed in every game. They got outscored 2-1. Yeah,
that's fair.
And so they are my dark horse team for that reason. As for eventual champions, this is Brad Jacobs here. I say he gets back on top.
I like it.
Brad Jacobs, yeah, that's fair. For me, in the playoffs, I'm going to go... This is tough. There's so many teams you can pick. I'm going to go with Canada. I'm going to go with Manitoba. I'm going to go with Northern Ontario. And I'm going to go with John Epping out of the wild card.
Ooh, I even calls the wild card shot. I like it, Joel.
I like that. I like John Epping's team. I don't know what happened to him in Ontario, but I mean, that's weird, and he's probably going to do much better than Scott McDonald does. No offense to him or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be bad team. There's going to be a good team that missed the playoffs, and I think new team, different changes. Maybe it's not quite Kevin Cooey's week again, so I think that. I'm going to go off the board a little bit for my dark horse team, just because every now and then he has that week that goes well, and Kerry Galusha played pretty well, so I'm going to go with Jamie Cooey in the Northwest Territories. Ooh,
I like it.
Maybe they don't make the playoffs probably, but you know what? They might have one of those weeks where they compete, and I'm going to say they're going to play in the championship round this year.
And you know what, Joel? He has a new look team as well. He's got younger. He's got a little bit more athletic in front of him. So I would agree. I like your take on that one. I will not dispute it. Had you said Nunavut, where the entire lineup is older than my dad,
no. I mean, they won. The women's team won a game, and that was great. But no, looking at them here, no. Eventual champion. As much as I would love to see Gushu do the three-peat, I'm going to go with you, Fraser. I think Mike McEwen gets over the hump at home. There's been so many big moment chokes for him, kind of like Gushu over the years, that it kind of feels like it's time for him now that he's got a different team around him, and it's probably, I think it's just going to work out for him, and it's going to be one of those moments like we tend to see, not quite to the same level that we saw in St. John's a couple years ago when Brad Gushu finally won and everyone was going nuts because, I mean, he's a rock star in Newfoundland, right? So
rock star.
I paused for the pun. I didn't really mean to because I didn't quite mean the pun, but it's been so long and so many struggles for him to finally get over that hump and being able to do it at home was pretty cool. So I think it's going to be, I do think Mike McEwen will beat Brad Gushu in the final. That's my pick.
I like it. I definitely like it. Mostly because, you agree with me, and the beer drinking philosophy has never led me astray.
No, and that's another reason why, at the end of the day, I had to pick Mike McEwen. So I guess that pretty much wraps up the first of, hopefully, many to come, of the first annual 8N Nation podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone.